Today we're going to talk about one of the most fun shows that I think I've ever done, but it's pretty silly, and it's Mary Poppins. And I thought it was one of the most fun things we've worked on. I'm sure you enjoyed it.
I did. It had, I love challenges.
Yeah.
I do. And I like the ones that I think, oh my God, how am I going to do that? How do I make that work? What is that about? Wow. Okay. Um, so of course, a number of the challenges have to do with technical aspects, and that isn't, that's a team effort. I need a set designer who can help create, that nursery that we could do all that magic in.
Yes.
And a tech director, Marcel, who could also do things that made things work. Um, and I had that, and that was great. And I know that specifically with the technical director, Marcel, who's worked, I think, on every show I've done out there, he was amazing. And I'd say, okay, so in the dance part here, where they kind of go into that not dream thing, so to speak, where the animals dance and they do all of that, I said, I have some people that look like they're coming out of a toy box. And I said, but I need them all to come out of there, and they can't fit in there,
Ah,
and they're not going to be in there the whole show beforehand, and the box is going to be pushed and moved. So, and oh, by the way, it's timed to music of when we push it, can we make this work? And it was like, nobody ever said no. It was always, okay, let me think on that. Let me see what I can do. And there were things that I know Marcel looked at me and thought, she's insane. What's wrong with her? But he never actually ever said it. And he would always come back and have something. But there was some technical thing I was asking for that he said, I don't know that we can do that. We have to do these other ones. We have these other things we're doing that we need to get done first and whatever. And I went, okay, I'm not really insane. And then when we get to that at some point in tech or maybe later rehearsal or whatever, all of a sudden it's there. And I'm going, Marcel, hello. And he goes, no, I managed to do it for you. And all I could say was, oh, well, first of all, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is amazing. I appreciate this so much. And you've just gone the extra mile. But I'm also going to tell you, you shot yourself in the foot, because now I know that you have that capability. And so now, the sky's the limit.
And I was saying those guys, to Skip and Marcel, you always say, "Can you do this?" And they always say yes. And sometimes in the meeting, sometimes afterwards, I'm like, "How are you going to do it?" And they're like, "I don't know."
I know. It
That's what I
really,
love
and
about them.
that kitchen in particular was quite, it was the brainchild of both Skip and Marcel,
Yeah.
to make it work and to, come up with all the things that I was saying, can I get this and this and this and this? And they go, yeah, we can probably make that work and whatever. And then they both had additional ideas, and that's, like I said, it's a team effort. And, they created things and gave me stuff that I hadn't thought about and just was like, whoa. And then when it came to, Bert walking on the proscenium, well, that's a whole nother bag of worms,
Yeah.
because that's bringing in, I think we did it with ZFX.
Yeah.
Um, that's
Yes.
bringing
It's
in,
part of the flying bill, but to be able to do that one move was an extra five
oh,
grand, I think.
yeah. And I had worked with ZFX quite a few times already, um, on other shows there at Cabrillo, and knew the people, and which was great because I was getting to a place where I think it was after that show, I was working somewhere that was using ZFX. And I said, and here's the coach I want. I already knew the people and who I wanted to come out and be the
Yeah.
main person who, breaks in the cast and conducts all those tech rehearsals for you and trains them.
So for our
And
audience, when you need to fly in a show, you hire a company called CFX generally because they've done it for every show in the world, and they send out a staff person. And Janie's saying she would know who to ask for even.
yeah, because he was wonderful. He was so supportive to the people at varying times in varying shows who were scared. And while I was looking to cast a Bert, I did have in the back of my mind, is it possible to find somebody who fills the bill as a Bert, actor, singer, the type, the dancing, who possibly has already done this? So I'm not having to break in a Bert from square one. Not only does he go up and walk, he dances when he's upside down, tap dances. And I thought, God, if I could find somebody who's already possibly done that, that's hard. Going up there, being upside down, in rehearsals for that length of time.
And I think tap dancing depends a lot on gravity, doesn't it? I mean, seriously.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, it was all of it. And luckily found someone who was wonderful.
He was great.
That was quite a nice arrangement, and I didn't know if it was going to happen, at all. And once again, ZFX had this down, and then so did the crew that, a chunk of the crew, it comes from Cabrillo. They get trained at the same time, whether you're flying people or doing that particular trick.
And we've done lots of flying. We've hired CFX many times.
Right. And that meant you had to train people from Cabrillo to be able to do all of this from A to Z, securely, safely, all the way through. And those people were always great. Every one of them, always great.
Every stage manager who's come through us has dealt with flying before, so it's really wonderful. Skip, as you know, is our set designer on almost every show we do, but he's also artistic director before. Marcel's our technical director and has built and made the magic happen with Skip on every one of our shows since Jesus Christ Superstar in 2008. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
In this episode, we hear Janie talk about how it was dealing with you guys and getting these things to happen. How do you like working with Janie Scott?
Janie's absolutely amazing. She's always a pleasure to work with. She's incredibly talented and creative, and always fun to bat around ideas with. She always has lots of ideas and is flexible enough so that we can kind of come up with creative ways to accomplish them. She's just wonderful to work with.
One of the things I appreciate is she really shoots for the moon, and but at the same time she knows where the Earth is.
Yeah.
And she'll come right down. Okay, I've got this to work with, but at the same time, it's like, give me more. The more you give me, the greater it is. And it's fun to be able to work with her in the way that you create something for her, and she'll use it, and use it wonderfully.
But if you also can't figure it out, she's like, it's okay. So it gives us an out if we can't.
Nobody will know.
Yeah, Mary Poppins was definitely one of the shows that was like, there was just so much magic in that show, and it was just one idea after another and after another, and it was so much fun to do. But there were also just we'd come up against little things where we were like, at the end we wanted little magic in it, where there was the old maid or the old nanny comes in and tries to pour the kids some of their medicine, and it's supposed to look horrid, and we're like, it was like a last minute thing. We're like, I think we could get dry ice in there, we could make it smoke, I think we can do it. And Janie's like, it's okay. I'm like, no, we're gonna try.
Well, that's what we love about you.
With that smoke bottle, it was Lindsay Chester was trying to make it work for me. She's like, okay, I have to put the dry ice in when? Okay, I should shake it and then walk out on stage with it. And we were like, okay, next time you got to put in the dry ice just a little bit later, just so we can get a little bit more smoke out of it as she came out on stage.
And Lindsay Chester was fantastic
Yeah,
as the other nanny.
absolutely.
She,
It was scary.
it's scary. So we're at production meetings, and these ideas are flying around and everything like that. And is that what happens, Skip? Do they just come up with ideas? We need magic. Is it in the script? Is Janie throwing stuff? How's that working?
Well, it's certainly we start with the script, and it's the guidebook of how the show rolls. And there's from the Broadway version, there's often suggestions of where magic's happening. Mary Poppins pulls a lamp out of her suitcase or whatever.
That was awesome.
And in production meetings and actually talking before, a lot of times we'll say, okay, are we doing that? And of course we're doing that. All right, what else do you want to do? Along with that, and a lot of times that comes up in rehearsal of some of the extra things that go beyond what the script is reading. And that's when we're starting to really start to discuss some of the challenges of really making it happen when we're in production meetings.
Are you in such a frenzy, Marcel, when you're building at that point or is there any time to go, hey, I have an idea, let's throw this in?
You're really good at that, Marcel.
Wow.
I usually shoot myself in the foot more often than not, honestly. Because I love it. I mean, for me, I get excited about it. It's funny. Janie at one point said, "You really like get off on this, don't you? You really like this, like she's so surprised that like you really want to do this crazy thing." I'm like, yeah, this is the fun part. Like with that show, we were just constantly like, oh yeah, we want to. She not only wanted to have the bag be on the table and pulling stuff out, but no, she wanted it to be transferred over to the floor.
Right.
And then also pull something out. So that meant that we not only had to have a trapdoor in the table where somebody was laying down underneath to feed out the extra things. Then just for an extra second gag, she walked over, placed it on the floor in a random location. Another trapdoor opens down. So we had another set of crew people underneath there feeding out. I think the lamp was underneath that one because it was a little bit taller. Then that trapdoor closed, and then we're like, oh yeah, we want to have a magical bed appear as well, and so we had to build another trap on the other side where a section of the floor just pistons up that she could hang a sheet over for a split second like gag, and then the light, of course, we'd like it to turn on, so we had to figure out how to put a remote like dimmer system in there to turn on the light, and that was all for just like super short gags. I mean, it was they didn't last very long, but man, like every single one of them was a little trick there for sure. So, well, I mean, obviously we're working as hard as we can to get the base, the set, the building up.
Yeah, which was huge in that show.
Yes.
Yeah, what were all the scenes that we had in that show? So we had the nursery, the roof, the living room was really big because it had the staircase as well. Yeah. Yeah. And that was the big thing, actually, where our set changes for that show ended up being really long because we had the part of the living room was also the nursery. It flipped around.
Right.
But we realized that was too long. So actually, like midway through tech rehearsal, we ripped off the wall and decided to fly it instead because it was just the set change was too long for the way that we were doing it. So well,
a lot of people talk about the kitchen, and I guess because it was, I mean, the nursery is amazing too, but that whole sequence where Scott Boynton bounces around the kitchen and knocks everything down, it looks like a complete disaster, and then she just does a few things and it reconstructs itself. It was just amazing. Tell us how that. Is that in the script, and how is conceived, and then how some of it worked?
People would frown upon in general is I do not try to read the script. For me, it's detrimental because for me, I'm not trying to create what's in the script because I'll drive myself crazy reading all these things where it's like right there it says, I'm like, I go to Janie, I go to Skip. I'm like, what is it that you guys are wanting? And I'll work off what your interpretation of it is because often I'll go in a completely different direction. So I take it off them. Like we want, you know, they'll tell us, you know, there's 3 actions have to happen. Like they want the Scott to be able to bounce off the cabinet first, and then the table to crash down, and then the smoke to come out of the stove, and then him to fall into the kitchen sink, and the water to spray out, and then we take those basic ideas, and then we just kind of go like, okay, well, what is it that we can accomplish that's relatively easy to reset? Because it's not just this one in particular wasn't one that you could just have something crash down, but you actually needed it to magically recreate itself again. And it was really fortunate, actually. Scott Boynton not only was in the cast playing that part, but he was actually helping build that kitchen as well. He actually built the shelf unit that fell down.
Yeah.
So,
Scott Boynton's been with us for years, not only as an actor, but as well, now he has his degree, I believe, right, Skip?
Yeah, he's a set designer and a graduate set designer, and it's terrific as well having many times we've built things and the actor is not very prop savvy, and it makes rehearsals really kind of challenging to make it look really good.
You have to train the actor.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep them safe and train them how to do it and how to not look stupid. And but Scott's always been, you know, he's got skill in many different ways.
And he slowly stole like elements of that show. I mean, for having such a small part, I mean, he was definitely called out frequently for being one of the favorites. For the reset, I think the bookshelf was relatively easy. That pivoted back and the plates kind of magically came back, and then they had string on them, and then weighting the little jug so that over the sink that it tipped down and came back. That was a trick. We had to wiggle it just right so that everything would flip back up again. And then the table was really done really well. I work really closely with a lot of my technicians. I give them an idea and we work together on it, but I would not say that it's all me. Right? I give them pieces and parts, and I have a great crew, and they work really hard to come up with these crazy ideas that we try to establish. But we have a really large pneumatic piston built into the table, and so as the table fell down, that was natural gravity would fall down, but we wanted it to magically like reopen again. So one of the children would walk by and hit a switch for a piston, and there was a air tank in the base of the table. It would activate the piston, and the piston would push forward this lever, which was the legs of the table, and that would raise the table back up. And at the same time, there was a pulley that the basket of fruit was attached to that would suck the fruit back up. So as it was going, it would magically come back into place as it was going. It was definitely one of the cooler ones that Jack did a wonderful job on that.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
One of the hallmarks of that show was the flying. Marcel, that's really an undertaking because you have to bring in another company to work with you technically, and then you have to train the whole staff because...
Yeah, CFX has been a great company to work with. They bring on the gear, they take the liability, and they really allow us to do a lot of fun things. For that show, what we had was one traveler line that goes all the way across, and that allowed Mary Poppins to do her face forward kind of flying, where she's able to do her little umbrella thing. And so that's a traveler line, and that requires a large track up in the air. And that one I think I had a little mechanical advantage. There's some interesting pulley system going on the upper level. There's a large rope that comes down on one side, and then there's another operator that travels. So you've got one person pulling up and down your actor, and then another person tracking them left to right. For Mary Poppins, it was very gradual. We didn't have to do as much kind of crazy flying with that. We usually do more elaborate flying with like Peter Pan, but then the really big trick, which just blew everybody's mind, was
and this was Madeline, right? The dancing, being able to go on the proscenium.
Yeah, exactly. It was for we had a great actor who'd played the part before. You need a lot of core strength to pull this trick off, and so the actor is put into a harness and is able to walk up to the side of the wall. And this time, instead of having a large rope that somebody pulls on, it's actually motorized so that it's more of a gradual lift and it's more controlled. So it was motorized so that he put his foot from the floor onto the proscenium, and then shifts his weight. And this is all him, core strength there. And he does his slow walk up, reaches the top, and he's actually not. There's actually not a. He's not on the proscenium. It's actually a small platform that makes it look like he's on the proscenium. That tracks that he's just miming walking upside down on as he's singing. But it was a fabulous trick, and it worked incredibly well.
It's going to cost this much money to do this, and you know, we were like, well, do we do this, because it was an expensive little endeavor to walk up the proscenium, but it was worth every single nickel.
Yeah.
Were there any exciting mishaps during the run of the production?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the hazards of doing a show like Mary Poppins, I actually put in my bio, though, that we survived the magic in Mary Poppins because we just kept adding more. I mean, we had streamers falling down from the sky. We had kite strings coming down from the sky. We had skyscape
drops falling over the audience as well.
Oh,
all those streamers being popped out over the audience.
Yeah, it was one of those shows where we just tried to put too much into one thing. And during opening night, I was sitting in the audience with my family, and I think it was right at like intermission. Luckily, it was right at a spot where it wasn't too bad, but there was a large thunk on stage, and a crew member, knowing where I sit normally, runs out into the audience and grabs me as I get pulled backstage. We had a piece of molding, a relatively large piece of crown molding had fallen off of one of our sceneries, had gotten hung up on another batten. We had another flying piece up there, and there's so much stuff in the air up there. It can happen, but in this situation, it actually grabbed it and pulled a piece of molding off, which fell down. And so even though we felt like we were done with that show, we weren't really done. So that was opening night. That next morning, Saturday, I came in and we removed all the crown molding all the way around and flattened it. So that instead of it was an angled crown molding, we made it flat so that it didn't stick out. Part of the issue was we had replaced the wall that was flying. We'd switched it over to another unit, and everything gets tighter and tighter up there. We were constantly tweaking things.
Yeah,
and when you're doing that, you're not able to repetitively do the things to double check, like, oh, I just changed that. How's that going to interact with something
Plus,
else?
you're having to work with the lighting designer who takes at least half the space up there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of space.
Well, with that show, especially, so much of the space was predicated by what the fly-in was needed.
Yeah.
There's a big alley that, you know, anytime you got anybody flying, and it was like you cannot put scenery there.
Yeah, and it was one of those shows too where it had made the actors nervous at that point in time, and I definitely felt personally responsible for that. It was one of those where, like, I wanted everybody, you know, I pride myself on everybody feeling safe and confident on the set that they're working at, and I felt like I had failed at that point, obviously. So, you know, coming in there and coming in to talk to the cast and crew at Circle and assuring them that we had done everything that we could. We realized what we did wrong. We flattened everything out, and we made sure that, you know, pre-show everybody is testing everything out, flying everything, moving everything, just to make sure that the tolerances are working out. Things aren't getting caught up on each other.
But Marcel, you do such a terrific job with that. In every aspect of keeping the actors and audience safe. It's always a prime concern. For just about every show, there's thousands of pounds of scenery hanging above actors' heads, and just keeping, you know, a nut from falling down could hurt somebody.
I will say with Marcel, the entire Cabrillo College comes to him with anything having to do with the theaters in terms of safety. I think you're one of you and Poco, our theater manager, Poco Marshall, and Elk Latham, our assistant. You guys are the experts, and we count on you. I mean, I obviously trust you with my life. I stand in that pit and conduct those shows, and sometimes I look up and wonder if I'm going to get killed by a godlight.
I got you a net now.
Yeah, he's got a net now. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you again for talking about Mary Poppins today, and it's great to see you again. And we'll get back together again soon. I'm sure of it.
All right, sounds good.
Well, today we're really fortunate that we have the Ward family here. And if you don't know the Wards, this is a very, very talented family from Scotts Valley. Our star of Cabrillo stage is Geoffrey Ward, who starred as our Mr. Banks in Mary Poppins and also Mr. Fezziwig in Scrooge. The name of the show is Mary Poppins, so she makes more entrances and everything like that. But the show is the show about Mr. Banks. And we thought of you before we had auditions. I think we invited you to the audition because after doing Mr. Fezziwig in Scrooge, we just thought you had the look, the presence, and the acting and singing chops to pull off this role. And you did. It was a great choice.
The only real contact I ever had with Mr. Banks was obviously the Mary Poppins movies, and so I hadn't seen it on stage. I actually have the book Mary Poppins. I started reading through that. But when I came to a rehearsal the first time and we did a read through and everything, Janie pulled me aside and she said, I said, what do you mean, She goes, don't go there. Go. I said, where? She goes, you're starting off really angry. Don't carry that through the show. That'll be just one level. There's nowhere to go. You're already there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I started thinking about it. I said, well, what do you want me to do? She goes, you start off angry, but then you go through this metamorphosis as the character and you end on the other end of the rainbow. And with that arc that we were talking about. And so with her guidance and her direction, which is really nice because as an actor, I want to be directed. Yeah. I don't like to walk onto a stage and just have the director go, oh, you're good enough. You know what you're doing. Go for it. No, I need to be corrected. And she walked me through that. And she, from scene to scene to scene, she goes, okay, take this here now, take this here now. And then I'll try something, I'll make different choices and she'll either say yes or no. But eventually as we got to opening night and got into our first week of runs, it just kind of all just settled into place where I started out this really angry, really impatient, doesn't want to put up with anything banker. And ended up a loving husband and father at the end to his children.
Yeah, and that's and we realized that about halfway through. We kept working about it. I remember talking about it, and somewhere in the middle, when you captured that arc, the whole show just completely changed. And you had the perfect Mrs. Banks.
Marlene Brenner.
Children were great too, but Mrs. Banks really she took it a little step further in terms of her role where she went, and she. Between her and the kids, and of course Mary Poppins is just a catalyst. She's off to another family even right now as we speak, I'm sure. It really came together. It was really a fantastic arc, and for me it was a personal realization that this show is about Mr. Banks. It's like I said, Mary Poppins is a catalyst and the kids and the wife are the reason for change. Right. And right when we were doing this, and I think we even held a special showing in the other theater for all the cast, this movie came out called Saving Mr. Banks.
Right.
Pretty much confirmed our whole arc there, because the book was actually written about Mr. Banks and his failure, essentially in the book, your success in the show. And so, what point did you decide to go away from the character from the movie? Because I didn't really feel like I didn't see a similarity particularly. I mean, it's hard to play too far outside the box with that character, but the guy in the movie is a little bit more comical about it, and I think you were a little more serious.
He played it kind of as a secondary character. The whole focus was on Julie Andrews as Mary Poppins, and Winifred, his wife, and the two kids. They all were kind of like in the background doing their own little subtext here. And Mary Poppins was running the show with Bert and the dancing penguins and things like that. And so when I started in rehearsal and reading through the script and breaking it apart with Janie and just reading into it a lot more, it came to me that I need layers. Mr. Banks has to have layers, you know, especially after she told me don't start out angry or start out angry, but don't end angry, you know, get this arc going. I had to have those layers in there as an actor to be able to pull that off. I needed to bring that really more as a human element onto the stage that the audience could really relate. Look at this guy. He's the SOB at the beginning, but he's actually kind of turning into a nice guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So especially when he breaks the vase and he finds his little stars that he had hidden when he was a kid and stuff.
And when you were doing it, I was rooting for Mr. Banks to get there. And when he finally gets there, it's almost like he has a nervous breakdown and gets there. Like he just falls apart.
That is more than loud enough. Go to your room. I don't care what you adjust. Upstairs now. Where's my briefcase? I put it right here. Michael? Jane? You give it to me! Must I put up with this behavior? You're their mother! Why can't you do something?
I can do something for a start!
Mary Poppins, you are here to teach the children manners, and just look at them! A pair of savages! If I had my way, you'd be out of this house!
That was a great show to watch. I don't know. I probably saw every
was
show. I just came and went. I don't know if you know this, but my student Stoli played Jane.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was
Very
completely
good.
an accident. There were like hundreds of girls that tried out, and I ended up with 3 of them in callbacks for that
Wonderful.
part. That was a little tough when one of them got it and the other 2 did not. But but it was fun to watch that show. And then also Lindsay Chester as that nanny. She was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that really helped your
Just
character
love
too,
her.
as Mr. Banks, seeing
Yeah.
his old nanny and seeing what his life. He didn't want his kids to grow up with his life.
Right.
That was the good part, the good change. So here's the big question that I ask everybody about Mary Poppins. We spent a lot of money on technical stuff, and we got Skip and Marcel promising anything that Janie wanted. Well, I want this to happen. I want that to happen. She snaps her fingers and things do stuff, and they go, oh sure, okay, no problem. I'm going like, how are you going to do that? And they go, I don't know. But anyway, technically that show was amazing. The flying, the everything else. What scene was of particular you thought was one of the best scenes technically where you wanted to go backstage and check it out?
Actually, there's 2. When the kitchen set would come out and they started expanding it, and I think it broke apart in the middle and fell.
Yeah.
And see, Mary Poppins is out there with the kids, and they're doing their whole thing, and they didn't blink. They just went on with the scene, just like nothing had happened.
And then they snapped she snaps her fingers.
And it goes back up.
That was incredible. It was so magical.
Yeah.
I literally I was a child. I literally felt like I was a child in that seat going, how are they doing
And
that?
I'm standing in the wings watching this. I'm going,
Yeah, it was amazing.
whoa.
Amazing.
Really amazing. That was created by Marcel and Skip. And it was, going back behind the set and seeing how that all pulled back together is really amazing. But the most expensive gag was Dustin coming to me and saying he had, hey, you want a great gag that's going to kill the audience for $5,000? And I said, yeah. It's not good. he goes, okay, well, we're already flying Mary Poppins, but we can pay that much extra, and we can have Bert dance up the side of the proscenium and over the top, which was amazing. And I thought that's what everybody would talk about after my $5,000.
Yes.
And all anybody talks about is that silly kitchen. So
But you know what's funny though? I actually, when I remember when the show was going, I go, you've got to see this. Bert walks the whole entire proscenium. It's just, he goes upside down. I go, you have to see this. I've never seen anything like it. That was utterly amazing.
Up and out,
It just brought the whole magic to that show.
Oh.
yeah,
That, again, as a kid, I'd watch the movies and stuff, and and that's what you'd expect from the movie, which was on stage. So, being a 20-something at the time, I'm watching this thing like, blah, 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 and then just boom, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
and they animated the penguins in the movie. We had actual kids in those penguin costumes.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
They were adorable.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, all of you,
Thank you.
and, for being with us today.
Thank
Oh, our
you.
pleasure. Thank you for having
so
us.
much.
Next week, we discuss a modern-day classic with only 2 actors and 7 musicians. Our Cabrillo Stage 2015 production of The Last 5 Years was beautiful and heart-rendering. We will talk to Mickey McGushin, musical director, about the difficult music and the orchestra, while Andrew Seglio will tell you about the abrupt change in the tech right before opening. All this and more next Thursday on The Stars of Cabrillo Stage.